There is something that can hurt more deeply than an argument, more deeply than anger, and sometimes even more deeply than rejection. It is the moment someone realizes that the person they once took for granted is no longer standing there waiting for their attention. And understand this carefully. This is not about manipulation. It is not about making someone jealous. It is not about playing emotional games. It is about what happens psychologically when a person finally stops giving unlimited access to someone who does not appreciate their presence. Because when you constantly give your time, attention, reassurance, and emotional energy, someone can begin to treat those things as normal, not because they are necessarily a bad person, but because human beings can become accustomed to what is consistently available. And sometimes people do not recognize the value of something until its availability changes. That is where the first lesson begins. When you stop chasing, if you are always initiating the conversation, always trying to fix the distance, always asking what is wrong, always trying to prove your worth, you may accidentally create a dynamic where the other person never has to wonder what it would feel like without you. But when you step back, not to punish, but to protect your peace, you create space, and space reveals things. It reveals whether someone genuinely values you or simply values the attention you provide. The second lesson is even more important. Stop looking for validation. Your worth cannot depend on someone's mood toward you. If she responds, you feel valuable. If she becomes distant, you feel worthless. If she compliments you, you feel confident. If she ignores you, your confidence disappears. That is emotional dependence. And the moment you understand this, everything begins to change. Confidence is not saying you need me. Confidence is saying, I know who I am, and I will not abandon myself just to keep someone else. That mindset is powerful because when you stop desperately trying to be chosen, you become capable of choosing what is healthy for you. Now comes the third lesson, boundaries. A boundary is not a threat. A boundary is not punishment. A boundary is a decision about what you will and will not accept. If someone repeatedly dismisses your feelings, disrespects your time, or only gives you attention when it benefits them, you do not need to create a dramatic confrontation. Sometimes the strongest response is simply changing your participation in that dynamic. You become less available for disrespect. You stop explaining yourself 10 times. You stop begging someone to understand your value, and you allow your behavior to communicate your standards. This is where many people make a mistake. They think becoming distant means becoming cold. No. You can have a good heart and still have strong boundaries. You can care about someone and still walk away from unhealthy behavior. You can love someone and still refuse to lose yourself trying to keep them. And then comes the fourth lesson, your growth. Nothing is more powerful than rebuilding your life after realizing you were giving too much of yourself away. Work on your goals. Take care of your body. Improve your communication. Develop emotional discipline. Strengthen your friendships, build your future, become peaceful when you are alone. Because the goal is not to make someone regret losing you. The goal is to become someone who no longer needs another person's regret to feel valuable. And if one day she notices the difference, let her notice it naturally. She may remember the person who was always available. She may notice that you no longer chase. She may see that your confidence has changed. She may wonder why you became so peaceful. But that is not your mission. Your mission is you, because the deepest consequence of being undervalued is not that someone else loses you. It is that you lose yourself while trying to convince them to appreciate you. Never make that mistake. Do not spend your life auditioning for a place in someone's heart. Give your best to people who recognize your best. And when someone consistently shows you that they do not value what you bring, believe their behavior. Do not argue with reality. Learn from it. Move forward and become stronger, not bitter. Become wiser, not colder. Become more selective, not emotionally unavailable. Because the most attractive form of confidence is not revenge. It is self-respect. And sometimes the thing that affects someone the most is simply realizing that the person they once took for granted finally understood their own value. So remember this. You do not need to make anyone hurt. You need to stop hurting yourself by accepting less than you deserve. Protect your peace, honor your boundaries, build your life, and let your growth speak for you. If this message gave you a new perspective, take a moment to reflect on where you may be giving too much of yourself. And if you want more educational relationship psychology and personal growth lessons, make sure you like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more. One of the most powerful emotional shifts that can happen in a relationship begins when a woman realizes that your attention is no longer guaranteed. When someone becomes accustomed to receiving your time, energy, messages, reassurance, affection, and constant availability, those things can gradually stop feeling special and start feeling normal. This does not necessarily mean that she is intentionally trying to take you for granted. Human psychology often adapts to whatever remains consistently present. When something is always available, the mind can begin to underestimate its importance because there is no perceived possibility of losing it. That is why constantly chasing someone's attention can sometimes create the opposite of what you want. If you are always sending the first message, always asking what is wrong, always trying to repair every moment of distance, always proving that you care, and always making yourself available regardless of how you are treated, there may be no opportunity for the other person to recognize the difference between having your presence and not having it. But there is an important distinction here. Stepping back should never be used as a manipulation tactic. You are not disappearing to make someone panic, create jealousy, or force a reaction. You are simply refusing to continue overinvesting where your effort is not being respected. That difference completely changes the psychology behind your actions. When you stop chasing, you give yourself the opportunity to observe. Instead of constantly reacting, you begin to notice whether the other person actually reaches out, whether they care about your feelings, whether they respect your time, and whether they contribute to the relationship without being pushed. Sometimes distance reveals information that constant communication hides. When you are always present, you may never discover whether your presence is genuinely appreciated or merely convenient. But when you become less available because you are focusing on your responsibilities, goals, friendships, personal development, and emotional well-being, the dynamic becomes clearer. Someone who truly values you may notice the change and make an effort to reconnect, communicate, or understand what happened. Someone who was only comfortable receiving your attention may simply allow the distance to grow. Either way, you receive valuable information without having to beg for an answer. This is why your absence can sometimes communicate more than your arguments. Not because absence is a weapon, but because it removes the noise and allows behavior to become visible. Your goal should never be to make someone suffer. Your goal should be to stop abandoning yourself for the sake of keeping someone else comfortable. You can care deeply and still have boundaries. You can love someone and still recognize when your effort has become one-sided. You can be kind without being endlessly available. The moment you understand that your attention is valuable, you stop giving it away simply to receive validation. You begin giving your energy intentionally to people and situations that deserve it, and that is where real self-respect begins. You are no longer asking, how can I make her value me? You are asking, why am I continuing to give so much where I do not feel valued? That question can completely change your life. The second lesson is about something many people struggle with without even realizing it: the need for validation. When your sense of worth depends on how another person treats you, your emotional stability becomes controlled by their behavior. If they respond quickly, you feel important. If they become distant, you start questioning yourself. If they compliment you, your confidence rises. If they seem uninterested, your confidence suddenly disappears. This creates an emotional cycle where you are constantly waiting for external approval to tell you how you should feel about yourself. But genuine confidence begins when you understand that your value does not increase because someone gives you attention, and it does not decrease because someone withdraws it. You were valuable before they noticed you, and you remain valuable even when they do not appreciate you. This is not about becoming arrogant or pretending that you do not care. It is about developing enough emotional security to care without becoming dependent. There is a major difference between wanting someone's affection and needing their affection to feel worthy. Wanting connection is completely human. Needing constant reassurance is where emotional dependence can begin. When you constantly ask whether everything is okay, repeatedly seek reassurance, or feel anxious whenever communication changes, you may unintentionally place your emotional well-being into someone else's hands. The healthier approach is to develop an internal source of confidence. Ask yourself what you respect about your own character. Ask yourself whether you are living according to your values. Ask whether you are becoming more disciplined, responsible, emotionally mature, and honest with yourself. These are things that another person cannot give you and cannot take away from you. When your confidence comes from within, your behavior changes naturally. You stop over-explaining yourself. You stop trying to convince someone of your worth. You stop sending multiple messages because you are afraid of being ignored. You stop changing your personality just to maintain someone's interest. Instead, you communicate clearly, remain respectful, and allow the other person to respond freely. This creates a healthier emotional dynamic because you are no longer trying to control the outcome. You are simply showing up as yourself and allowing reality to reveal itself. Sometimes the hardest lesson is realizing that no amount of effort can make another person appreciate what they have chosen not to appreciate. You can give more attention, more patience, more affection, and more reassurance, but you cannot force genuine appreciation. That must come from the other person's own awareness. Therefore, your responsibility is not to constantly prove that you deserve respect. Your responsibility is to respect yourself enough to recognize when your energy is being wasted. The strongest form of confidence is quiet. It does not announce itself. It does not demand approval. It does not need to win every conversation. It simply knows, I know who I am, I know what I bring, and I will not lose myself trying to convince someone else. Once you develop that mindset, rejection becomes information rather than destruction. Distance becomes clarity rather than panic. And someone's lack of appreciation becomes a reason to evaluate the relationship rather than your worth. That is emotional independence. And it is one of the most powerful forms of personal growth you can develop. Boundaries are one of the clearest ways to show self-respect because they communicate what you are willing to accept and what you are not willing to tolerate in your life. Many people misunderstand boundaries and think they are a way to control another person, but a real boundary is not about controlling someone else's behavior. It is about controlling your own response to behavior that repeatedly hurts, disrespects, or diminishes you. If someone constantly ignores your feelings, cancels plans without consideration, speaks to you disrespectfully, only gives attention when it is convenient, or expects you to remain available while giving very little in return, you do not have to respond with anger, revenge, or dramatic arguments. You can simply recognize the pattern and decide how you will participate in it. This is where emotional maturity becomes important. Anyone can react when they feel disrespected, but strength is being able to pause, observe the situation, and respond according to your values rather than your emotions. Sometimes people explain their boundaries again and again because they hope the other person will finally understand. But if someone repeatedly ignores what you have already communicated, repeating yourself may not change anything. Your actions may need to become the communication. If you have explained that disrespect is unacceptable and the same behavior continues, you can reduce your involvement, stop making yourself constantly available, or choose to leave the situation entirely. This is not punishment. It is self-protection. You are not trying to make someone feel guilty. You are simply refusing to participate in a dynamic that damages your peace. There is also a difference between having boundaries and becoming emotionally cold. A person with healthy boundaries can still be loving, compassionate, patient, and understanding. You can forgive someone without giving them unlimited access to repeat the same behavior. You can care about someone without accepting everything they do. You can communicate your feelings without begging for basic respect. And you can walk away without creating hatred. That is real emotional strength. When you begin living this way, something changes inside you. You no longer feel responsible for fixing every problem or maintaining every connection at any cost. You stop thinking that keeping someone in your life is more important than maintaining your own dignity. You begin asking different questions. Instead of asking, how can I make this person treat me better? You ask, what will I do if this behavior continues? That shift puts responsibility back where it belongs, on your own choices. Healthy relationships require mutual effort, respect, communication, and consideration. If those qualities are consistently missing, no amount of chasing can create them. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is step away from the argument and allow your actions to demonstrate your standards. Do not threaten to leave every time you are upset. Do not use silence as a weapon. Do not create unnecessary drama. Simply become consistent with your values. If you say you will not accept disrespect, then do not repeatedly remain in situations where disrespect is normalized. If you say your time matters, then stop giving unlimited access to people who continually waste it. If you say you value honesty, then be honest about what you can and cannot tolerate. Boundaries become powerful when they are calm, consistent, and followed by action. Ultimately, the purpose of a boundary is not to make another person afraid of losing you. It is to make sure you do not lose yourself while trying to keep someone else. The final lesson is about growth, because one of the most powerful things you can do after realizing that you have been undervalued is to stop making your life revolve around that experience and start investing your energy into becoming stronger, wiser, calmer, and more fulfilled. When someone does not recognize your value, the natural reaction can be to wonder what you could have done differently, what you could have said, or how you could make them realize what they lost. But constantly thinking about another person's reaction keeps your attention trapped in the past. Real growth begins when you stop asking whether someone will regret losing you and start asking whether you are proud of the person you are becoming. Your focus should move toward your health, your goals, your career, your discipline, your friendships, your emotional intelligence, and the life you want to build. This transformation is not about creating an image for someone else to notice. It is about creating a life that feels meaningful even when nobody is watching. When you become focused on your own development, you naturally become less dependent on external approval. You begin to understand that your peace is more valuable than temporary attention. You stop measuring your progress by whether someone comes back, sends a message, or suddenly changes their behavior. Instead, you measure progress by how calmly you handle rejection, how consistently you keep your promises to yourself, how responsibly you manage your emotions, and how confidently you continue moving forward. This is where personal growth becomes psychologically powerful. People can often sense when someone is genuinely changing because authentic growth does not require announcements. You do not have to tell anyone that you are stronger. Your behavior demonstrates it. You become more patient. You communicate more clearly. You stop reacting impulsively. You no longer feel the need to prove that you are desirable or important. You become comfortable with silence because silence no longer feels like rejection. You become comfortable being alone because you understand that solitude is not the same as loneliness. You can appreciate another person's presence without becoming dependent on it. And if someone eventually notices your transformation, that is simply a consequence of your growth, not the reason behind it. Maybe they realize that your energy is different. Maybe they notice that you are no longer constantly seeking their attention. Maybe they begin to wonder why you seem more peaceful and focused. But you should never build your progress around the hope that someone will eventually regret their choices. That would still give them control over your emotions. The real victory is reaching a point where their reaction is no longer necessary for your happiness. You can wish someone well without needing them back. You can remember good moments without returning to an unhealthy situation. You can forgive without reopening a door that should remain closed. You can care without chasing. Most importantly, you can move forward without becoming bitter. Being undervalued should not teach you to distrust everyone. It should teach you to become more discerning about where you invest your time and energy. Let the experience make you wiser, not colder. Let it strengthen your standards, not destroy your ability to love. Let it teach you that your life is too valuable to spend constantly proving yourself to someone who has already shown you that they do not appreciate what you bring. Keep building, keep learning, keep improving, keep becoming the person you know you are capable of becoming. Because the greatest response to being undervalued is not revenge, jealousy, or trying to make someone hurt. It is becoming so grounded in your own purpose that you no longer need anyone else to recognize your worth before you recognize it yourself.